So, like, I think abortion should be up to the states. I am pro-choice, but I think it should be up to the states.
So you're a right-wing libertarian, although and I understand what you mean by that. You don't like taxes and you like individual rights.
Basically, yeah.
So we were having that discussion earlier about the U.S. interventions into genocide. I don't know. I sort of wanted to push back on what you were saying. Of course, it's true that we have the military capacity to intervene in these countries, but I think that you were painting a picture that made it seem as though it was easy to intervene in these countries, which is something that I would push back on it. I think it would it would take a lot of our resources or our capacities. But is that a correct assessment or no?
In relation to other things that the United States military does, it wouldn't take that much. Okay, you can take a couple bases out of, for example, Germany, and you can easily make up for the resources that would be spent on a country such as Myanmar. Because I was citing specifically Myanmar, tiny country, tiny military, no economic or political or military power, but they are committing this genocide, and it would be very easy in relation to other things. Okay, I'm not saying like easy in general, but in relation to other things that the United States military does, it would be easy.
So compared to Iraq, you think it would be a lot easier?
Oh yeah, a million times easier.
Why do you think that?
The pure size of the power that these countries have, or that Myanmar has.
Myanmar has 1/3 the GDP of Iraq, and it has just as many people. In terms of the terrain, it would be very hard to go in and intervene. And I was making the case that a UN sanctioned intervention is the right way to go, not because it's we can't intervene on our own. Of course we can, but in terms of making the case, a sustainable case for anti-genocide, there has to be a universality in order for it to be acceptable, not only to the international community, which we have plenty of partners in, of course, but also to the people themselves. So what would you think about that?
I mean, it already, like there are multiple countries that have considered Myanmar a genocide that have just refused to do jack shit about it. There are multiple countries that have called out Myanmar and said stop, but that they stopped there. It's not a matter of acceptance as to whether it's genocide from these other countries. It's a matter of actually wanting to put in the effort to stop it. Because again, there is absolutely no economic gain from it. There is no gain in any way other than a moral stopping a genocide.
There is a gain from the perspective of the military-industrial complex. No?
I mean, not that much. Again, it's not that much more effort. It's not like we would have to draft people. It's not any of that shit. It's sending people. You could quite literally send probably like less than half of the people stationed overseas
I think
to
it's
Myanmar.
also good, but I think it's also good just in terms of in limiting our responsibility, or not our responsibility, but our involvement. If the UN is involved, then we as an individual country have to expend less of our resources. I think that's
So
another
yes,
benefit of it.
yes. However, so let's think about this for a second. There are, I forget the number. It's at least 160 countries that have, I believe, signed on to the Never Again Pact. How many of them have done shit about Myanmar? The Never Again genocide is to not let this happen. It's not to call it out. It is to not let this happen. So if no other fucking country is gonna do it, the United States can be the first.
Again, you can talk about being the first, but in this scenario, it wouldn't be really the first because we would be taking on an onus that would make the entire action deeply unpopular because of how unilaterally it was taken. A lot of global south countries object to this posture in general, and I don't think that we necessarily need to point to this one crisis where not enough is being done and say that it's not that we that there isn't a precedent for involvement, there isn't a precedent for coalition building in stopping a genocide. I think Serbia is a good example of that, but I think that this is probably not the. What I'm saying is, would you like to discuss something else? Because I'm thinking here that this is maybe not your strong suit or the part of politics that you're so interested in.
I mean, intervening in genocide is something that matters to me, buddy. If something is a well-recognized genocide, there is no reason for the United States there's no moral reason for the United States not to intervene. Or there is no moral reason for the United States to, at the very least, not push for the UN to do something about it. But they have done none of this.
I agree with that. I would agree, yeah, they should push for it in the UN.
I mean, we can talk about taxes, we can talk about gun rights, we can talk about individual liberties, we can talk about state rights.
Okay.
Where do you want to go with this?
I imagine you're pro gun rights.
I am also pro legislation, or not licensing.
Okay, so I guess we would agree there, but wanted to hear a more. I wanted you to reiterate what you thought about Reagan tax cuts, Bush tax cuts. Do you think they've been good for the country or bad?
I'd have to look back at the specifics that they do, because I know about a million fucking tax cuts and the names of them I don't. But I can tell you, just like off of the top of my head right now, is that tax cuts, especially for not corporations, are generally good. I think that cutting taxes at least a little bit, because I am very much a person who believes that we have to find some sort of middle ground between Democrats and Republicans, or else nothing is going to ever get done. So some level of tax cuts, everyone can agree with some level of tax cuts, at least for one income bracket. Everyone can agree for that. So some level of tax cuts for everyone.
That's not true.
Everyone can agree with tax cuts, at least for the lowest earners.
True. I mean, a lot of Republicans would disagree. There are some Republicans who believe in a flat tax rate, that everybody should pay the same amount, just for an example.
A lot of them think that should be lower than what it is now. Some sort of tax cut. I don't specifically oppose a flat tax. What I think that needs to be done is getting rid of loopholes for taxes. But you don't need to raise taxes. You just need to get rid of the loopholes that people use to get around taxes, and then you have your fucking tax money. If you get rid of the loopholes, considering the top earners pay damn near all of the fucking taxes, get rid of the loopholes and lower the taxes a little bit, you'll be fine. On top of that, a flat tax rate, I see no issue with. Everyone paying their own fair share, right? That's what I see a lot of liberals yelling about, all right, fair share. A flat tax rate is quite literally a fair share, but you would still have the rich paying more in taxes because they make more, so that flat tax rate would make them pay more.
No, I mean, I'm in great opposition to a flat tax rate, because the truth is, if you think about it, it would demand that, let's say, if you have a 10% flat tax rate, you demand that if someone is making $1,000 a month pay up $100. When that amount of money is vital, it seems very cruel to construct a system in which this is what is required of people.
I don't think a flat tax rate should be that high. I think the majority of tax income should come from sales tax.
What do you think the effective tax rate should be in America?
Effective tax rate? Well, I mean, I live in a state with no income tax. I see damn near, like, I understand the reasoning behind income tax. That's not what I'm saying here. But I see damn near no reason where we can't replace that, at least mostly, with things like income tax. I'm pro sales tax because you have to have some tax income. As little of an income tax as possible.
Are you wary of the ways in which that disproportionately targets the poor?
Things like sales tax?
Yeah.
You would still have rich people paying more of the sales tax. You still have rich people paying more taxes.
It'd be a greater percentage of the poor's income.
It's like that with anything. Not with anything.
Course, but
you pay taxes on the money that you choose to put back into the economy. If you choose to save, if you choose to invest, you don't pay taxes.
When you're talking about food, when you're talking about essentials, when you're talking about rent, I mean, rent wouldn't strictly classify as sales, but there are plenty of things that are essential to poor people. Seems like they would be paying a premium for in this system.
They'd be paying the exact same amount as everyone else in quality.
It's equality in terms of the rate, but not in terms of the experience, because the rich have far more, and because of this, what they end up paying as a percentage when it comes to the sales tax is a lot less, because there is a petering off point at which you start to need a lot less, and once your basic needs are all met, you don't need to go out and spend as much anymore.
Yeah, but realistically, rich people do still continue to go out and spend. Obviously, there are outliers. There are rich people who live the life of quote unquote poor people, like that live very frugally.
That is
but realistically, a lot of them will continue to go out and spend more and pay more into the sales tax. You buy nicer things. You buy even at like the basic level, tend to buy from nicer grocery stores. Tend to do things like pay for DoorDash, for example. Tend to buy slightly nicer car. Tend to buy slightly nicer everything, which increases the cost of that thing, which increases the amount of tax that they would be paying.
The truth is that like, yes, of course there is always a scaling up, but the fact is that it's not linear. It's not even close. It does peter off, and there's a base level at which this does target poor people more. But I think the truth is that the richest people in our society, the ideological argument that can be made for them having to pay in more to this society, is that what they've succeeded in creating is a product of the success of the society.
So yeah, effort of the public is super important. But do you know what needs to happen to make that effort and that like first invention of a computer into a realistic solution for example, millions of Americans to own a computer. Do you know what that takes? It takes more than effort. It takes an investment. It takes willingness for this to fail. It takes the ability for someone to invest money and have this fail. Someone could lose their entire life savings because I thought that this was going to work and then it didn't work. That is what owners, founders of companies gain. And that is what their work is, aside from other things. But that is what it is. It is taking on that risk that everyone else does not take on because they don't have the ability or they don't have the drive to do so.
Well, it's not that I don't believe in disproportionate reward, but I think the extent to which we have it in our society is too much.
I think that if someone is the first person to think up a great idea, they shouldn't be rewarded for that great idea.
It's not about them being the first person as much. When you think about a company like Microsoft, for example, a lot of people and a lot of work went into that product, those products. A man has a claim to the entire company because he founded it, but it is not necessarily direct proportion to the amount of work that a person put in.
It's not about work. It's about work, risk, and smarts. All of those combined create your income.
The truth is that since Bill Gates founded the company Microsoft, he is able to now stake a claim to all of the following income that company makes.
Because none of that would have happened without him.
You can say that, but the truth is that that is not a justification for not rewarding the employees who work at the company.
You're talking about Microsoft employees who are paid an exponentially high amount compared to, for example, minimum wage.
I mean, it's just illustrative. It's not necessarily related to the company itself. It's just the first one I could think of. But I did want to say that you were making a point about how none of this would have happened were it not for his work. But none of this would have happened were it not for the initiative that the military took in creating the first computer. Our funding, our collective effort went into supporting the construction of this device, that we should have some sort of ability to receive what we sow.
Do you saying the public hasn't gotten any benefit from the creation of a computer?
Not that we haven't gotten any benefit, but I think that the whole idea that it's detached from, well, okay, see, you've been building this narrative that it's an individual effort and so we should get a reward commensurate with that. I think that the truth is that it is also a product of the public, and I think that that is not being recognized.
Computers in general are, but at the same time, computers in general are not patented. There's things like parts that are patented, that people and engineers that work for companies and such, those are patented. Those are what create the individual product. You have like the big creators being Microsoft and Apple. You have those two who created their own pieces of this. They created their own special version of this. They created advancements within this that the public did not create. They created these. The public should not be getting general benefits from what an individual company does other than the products of that company. And if you have bought into the company, then yeah, you get, like, for example, stock benefits from them.
Just in a similar line of thought to how since Bill Gates founded the company, he should be able to reap some of the rewards. Since we, as a nation, helped to promote, create some of the technology that went into making that additional technology a success, we should have a claim to some of the money at least. I don't think that it should be not inconsiderate of the individual efforts.
So what specifically do you think that the everyday American should get?
I think that we should be able to crack down on international tax havens, ensure that the richest of the rich are taxed at least taxed at the current rate. I mean, I would like to see an increase on that rate, but I mean, at the very least, if we could start to see a tax, that
Great. So you and I have already both agreed on that, right? I think the loopholes should be taken out of laws.
Well, I mean, I would like to see an increase in the tax rate, so I guess that's where you and I would disagree.
Why an increase in the tax rate rather than making people actually pay the current tax rate? Because every time that we increase the tax rate,
No, no,
It doesn't really do all that much,
no, no. Look,
considering
I'm asking about.
the amount of
Oh, sorry,
people
sorry.
that just go through the loopholes anyways.
The thing is, it would just be both as opposed to just one. First, like shore up the loopholes, but I'd also want to be able to increase the tax rate.
What would you want to increase to?
The top marginal tax rate, 60%.
What's
I
your
think
rationale for 50%?
when we had a greater degree of, when we had a higher tax rate, I think that the country was better functioning in a lot of ways. I think there are a lot of things that we need to promote within our country, such as education, such as universal healthcare, such as, in order to do those things, we're going to need to increase the tax rate. That's why I
So are you
promote it
talking on a federal level or on a state level?
on a federal level.
Generally, education and such are done on a local level and on a state level for like
No,
universities
no,
and
I know,
such.
but the federal government does give out tax grants. Or not tax grants, just grants for a lot of schools that, that educate. But I was aware of the contradictions when I was making that example. Still, I made it just because it's one example of the many things that we need to do in the country. So yeah, I mean, universal healthcare would probably be the best example.
Universal healthcare is one where I think it should be an opt-in system. Where you can opt in, say it's just like for example, every like 5 years or something. And for that next 5 years, you get access to the like universal healthcare. It's not super high level healthcare, right? You're not getting like the fancy extra treatments or anything, but you're getting healthcare. You can opt into that. You then have to pay the taxes for that. If you opt out of that, you don't get access to that. You have to have private insurance or pay out of pocket, and you don't have to pay the taxes on that.
Healthcare becomes like a very complicated discussion. But um, what I wanted to advocate, instead of, I think a public option can greatly hamstring a universal program. Having universality in terms of negotiation, in terms of medical providers, can
That's
really
what I
help.
include. That's what I include when I say universal healthcare. The government has the ability to negotiate. You have access to all providers. The only thing that is left out of it is the special over-the-top treatments and stuff.
Oh, so okay. Okay, so if you can opt out, then that means you can completely recuse yourself from the system. If there is still an opt-in system, then wouldn't you still have this issue of the government not being able to negotiate? There still being doctors tied to specific providers.
Again, like I said, so the universal healthcare, the doctors have to accept the universal healthcare. It's universal healthcare. As with any private insurance company, the government has the ability to negotiate prices and such. You just have the option of going private and not paying the taxes on that.
A lot like Obamacare now. So how would you distinguish this plan from that one?
Obamacare, I believe, had some economic level implications.
So that's the only way in which you distinguish.
That would be the main thing in that it is universal. It is any doctor.
Major argument that I wanted to levy is that just in terms of social cohesion, it's a lot higher when you have a higher tax rate, when you're ensuring that people can get unemployment, when you're ensuring that, and not to say that everything that was done during COVID was correct, but when you're making sure that people are not socially disenfranchised, when you're making sure that people are able to take advantage of social mobility, when you're ensuring that people can get good health care, so on and so forth.
So what do you think that a 60% income tax federally would
Well,
do
the thing is,
for?
okay, one thing is that you are a Republican, so you're advocating for a system, but this is nothing close to what the Republicans would advocate for.
Yeah, it aligns. It's a mix of all of them, but I agree more with what the Republicans in terms of what I find the most important in that policy in policies. I side more with the Republicans.
So you're a Republican, and you don't find Iraq to be deeply problematic in terms of how it ballooned our debt.
I already said it was
Afghanistan too,
problematic.
but don't you think that it's such a significant wedge issue, such a significant thing that really fundamentally changed the course of our country, that it should be treated with a different weight, such that anyone who self-identifies as libertarian would find that they could not support such a party that created so much debt with that conflict.
There is not any party in the United States that has not created debt. Okay, every party has fucked up. There are obviously mistakes that both parties have made.
It's
Okay,
not just about their ideals, it's about how they actually function. The Republicans claim to be the party of fiscal responsibility. Voting Republican does disastrous things to our debt because Republicans never adhere to the economic principle of raising taxes during times of a good economy. Republicans always are trying to cut the social safety net in terms of even Medicare at times. And I think that your vision for the country is really a lot more similar to someone like Pete Buttigieg, maybe save for something like gun rights.
Have I ever said that I wanted taxes to raise at all?
No, but it's
Exactly.
not
And I
like
want funding to be cut. And I've already talked about places where funding can be cut. Like I've talked about social safety nets, specifically unemployment, that are far too vast, that would also cut spending and allow for taxes to either be dropped or stay the same.
are those the fundamental issues in which you see yourself as being more of a Republican. The is that really the only issue, the unemployment?
Taxes, gun control, the overarching idea of states' rights. So like I think abortion should be up to the states. I am pro-choice, but I think it should be up to the states.
Can you expand on that?
I'm pro-choice, but it's a healthcare decision, which has in large part been left up to the states. The Supreme Court said that in Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was shit law. Dobbs fixed that.
Okay, so you like Dobbs. So you're pro-choice. So do you not agree with Roe v. Wade's
Legal
thesis?
reasoning? I don't agree with their legal reasoning.
No. Okay, that's fine. But do you agree with their thesis?
Yeah, I agree that abortion should be. I think that abortion should be allowed up until viability.
In your perfect world, there would be a constitutional amendment for this. Is that right? That's just
Maybe. I'm kind of split
okay.
on that one. But as of right now, up to the states.
Okay. Because it's just based on a belief in rules. Is that right?
I believe that we should give the states as much power as possible. And this is just one example where it can be left up to the states.
The rationale for states' rights, while supported in our Constitution, does not functionally work as far as like nation building. I think that the reality is that the institution of the United States of America makes this whole country work.
On a principle level, do you think that democracy is important?
Yes.
What level do you have the most representation in? State or federal?
Local.
Exactly. Yeah, the closer local you get, the more representation. That's why I am strong for states' rights. Because it allows the people of that state to have a representation, more of a representation.
No, but in the modern world, more and more and more national issues are affecting the lives of people.
What is your framework for a national issue?
Right, so nothing strictly breaks down in that way, but you are beginning to have more and more corporations like Amazon, for example, that exploit the fact that plenty of cities would love to have Amazon in in their city so that they could provide jobs, right? There's always this sweepstakes for an Amazon headquarters that comes up, or any big company. But the truth is that Amazon as an institution owes its success to America as a society. It should not be able to take advantage of so cruelly the desires of a city legislature to get jobs in there when it has a debt to pay to the entirety of America. That is one issue.
So why do you think Amazon has a debt to pay to the entirety of America?
Well, because its successes are based on our market. Supply chain infrastructure can be in part, well, I mean almost entirely, as a result of our work in creating an infrastructure.
Do you mean in terms of like roads, planes, trains? You mean like actual infrastructure? These companies pay to ship things across these methods of transportation. I don't know exactly if Amazon is one of them. Amazon is probably like one of the companies that doesn't pay at least as much as they should in taxes, which again, we both agree that should be changed. The loophole should be taken away.
I just want to remind, it's about, you asked me what makes me think about things a lot more in terms of national. Well, this is one of those things.
Yeah, but I'm asking for an explanation of this one, considering when like Microsoft came up, for example, your explanation kind of fell through. That's why I'm asking for a solid explanation so that we can actually have a grounds to talk about here.
No, I'm saying this is a national issue because Amazon's success is not, principally concerning the cities that it deals with. It's concerning all of America. It's working inside of the entirety of America. It's using all of America's infrastructure. And so when I say infrastructure, I mean the trains that it uses. I mean the roads that it uses. I mean the internet that America helped to create.
So do you think, for example, like the mom and pop shop down the street also owes their success to the American people and
Yes,
should somehow pay their success to the American people? How do you suppose they should, I guess, give that back?
I'm not gonna make the mom and pop, pay tremendous amounts of money. They are already paying us back in terms of the jobs they create. Same thing with Amazon.
So why does Amazon's jobs themselves themselves not paying back, but the mom and pop shop does.
But did you hear what I said? I said same thing with Amazon. But Amazon is a company that gets, high profit margins. It's extremely profitable. You can look at the mom and pop shop and you can understand that a lot of what it creates goes back into the economy. And a lot of what it creates is there's not a high margin on it. I mean that's the reality of it.
Fine, let's
Yeah.
talk like a mom and pop internet shop that doesn't have a storefront. Generally, stores without a storefront have a pretty high margin because they don't have to pay for the brick and mortar shop. It tends to be a higher, at least higher. That is one of the keys to Amazon's success, is that there is no brick and mortar shops. Now there is. Now they have like Amazon bookstores and Amazon groceries, but that's because they've already reached that level of
I know,
success.
but recently I know that vendors have been getting squeezed, because of supply chain weaknesses and whatever. Like I know
Yeah,
it's been harder to make a living.
and that's
So
hit
it's like
Amazon as
I'm
well.
like, yeah, it has hit Amazon as well, but I'm not think
Well,
that
what I'm trying to illustrate is one, why the mom and pop shop is different from Amazon in your mind, and also why you think what more you think needs to be paid
because I
back.
think that so we talked about taxes. So I mean, as if we could shore up tax loopholes, that would go a long way to doing that. But you're raising this issue of doesn't Amazon already pay back? And I think the answer is no, it doesn't. And the mom and pop does. And this can be displayed in terms of how the mom and pop pays income taxes. The mom and pop, beyond just servicing the community, it pays its taxes. It helps create the community in a way that's not absentee.
Like, it goes back to that thing of, you have yet to mention something that isn't covered in what I've already said that I want.
The only reason I'm explaining this is because you asked me, what do you see that is a national issue?
Yeah, but
Well,
if we go back to this, right? Because we were talking about like 60% income tax rate, for example, like you said, right? And how this would help with things that are national issues. But you have yet to actually tie that all back together in a way that what I've already proposed doesn't do already.
well, look, it's just in reference to how the Amazon question is a national issue. It's not something that is affecting a locality and so should be concerning the locality. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying that in terms of a national economy, I'm just saying that we live in a world that's governed by a national economy. A lot of what concerns the lives of everyday American people is occurring on a national scale in terms of the stock market, in terms of national housing prices, in terms of multinational corporations. So I think that that's why I talk about governing on a national level as opposed to governing on a state level.
I mean, yes, but a lot of issues that you bring up are handled locally. Like, the federal government just does not handle those issues. I think that's where the problem comes in. A lot of issues that you bring up are just handled locally. That's how the United States is organized. So I don't know necessarily what you want to happen federally to fix those.
One, I would advocate for universal healthcare, which would be significant in terms of the taxes that it would require. Then I would advocate for more federal grants for education. I understand that it's currently conducted locally, but I would want it to be promoted more nationally. Then I believe in national investments in energy infrastructure, and that's something to that I'm more open to hearing
I believe we already
arguments on.
have national investments in energy infrastructure.
No, I know, but and look, the extent to which we're doing it now is positive, but I think for a long time we were neglecting it, so I think it's
I have a question. This is like semi a side note. What is your opinion on nuclear energy?
it's good. It's not a cure-all, but it's good. I think there
Can
are
you
a lot of
expand?
problems as far as the sourcing of the uranium. I think that if you were to like fully convert to nuclear energy, there would be a serious issue because I don't think we have the amount of uranium to do that. Look, I believe in nuclear energy for not just major metropolitan hubs, for cities, for cities. But again, it's not a cure-all, and it's definitely it's more than just a stepping stone. It's like a pillar on which we can build.
Solid, solid. Thank you. A lot of lefties don't like nuclear energy for some reason, or at least a lot of the ones that I talk to here. It's not perfect, but in terms of like clean energy or cleaner energy options, it is
Yeah, and you take it
really the
in, in,
best one we
in
have.
terms of like
Going back to federal issues, so you think that there should be more education grants, and did you want more energy grants, or
well, I'd have to look into it more. As of right now, no. I'm not necessarily an advocate for that. I think, I am like tentatively in favor of it, but it's not something that I would go out on a limb for because it's not something I've really looked into. At the same time, though, I think it's an important point to raise when we're talking about policy initiatives as far as the next 10, 20 years. And I also think that it's important to bring up another thing that I want to bring up is that increased taxation in general would help to service the debt. For a long time wasn't a serious issue in this country. It's now become one. And
Lower
I think it's
spending would
important.
also help with that.
Well, not necessarily. It's more complicated than that because if we're talking about lower spending, right, you raised the issue of employment. Like if you're giving people money for unemployment, they are going to go out there and spend that money on items. It's not the same way that they would if they were, working a job.
I mean, again, I'm gonna go back to the point of I quite literally know people who made more on unemployment than they did working. I know people who
So
saved
if that,
over
look,
$5,000 on unemployment.
I'm aware of these stories, and so it's telling that you live in Washington because that is a place with the crazy high housing market, and people are still able to do that. It is somewhat remarkable. But look, the extent that's occurring, that's good. But the thing is, I'm just trying to raise the point that it's not as simple as cutting expenses. Yes, like cutting fat, sure, but cutting expenses, not necessarily.
Why? If it's as simple as increasing taxes, why is it not as simple as cutting spending?
Because there's a knock-on effect as far as, well, okay, it isn't as simple when it comes to increasing taxes to service the debt. I don't want to say that. I don't want to adhere to that belief because it's not true. Austerity is bad, but there are specific contexts in which increasing the tax rate can give you an increased amount of tax revenue, which can help you to service the debt in terms of, and does this in a way that does not take away from your GDP development, at least insofar as it's still a positive thing to do. And so, yes, that's why I would advocate for it in general. Now, in this economic moment, this very economic moment, no, I wouldn't. But there comes a point where it's important to talk about these things because in the very near future, it should be on our policy table list. And I don't think it's going to be, I think it's important to bring up because you're voting Republican.
Yeah, I'm voting Republican because I disagree with that. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to increasing taxes and keeping the same amount of spending, yeah, that has an effect. Or even increasing spending and increasing taxes more, yeah, that has an effect on the debt. But there's no real way to say that that has more of an effect on the debt than just reducing spending.
I'm not going to have an economics debate right now. I don't think I'm well read enough.
I mean, we're probably just going to end up going in circles from now on economy then.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there any other specific issues or general issues that you want to talk to me about?
Earlier, I remember we were talking about gay rights, and I completely disagree with you about it being a non-issue because I think that.
Hello? He just went silent. Is
Yeah,
he
yeah.
cutting
Hello,
out for
hello,
you
hello.
too, Beatles?
It's still cutting out. Maybe Discord doesn't want us to hear what he has to say.
I hate Discord, bro. Kirby. I'm just gonna peace on this conversation then.